So what is going on with Alabama? Everybody's going to have a meltdown, like, oh, they're going to have a terrible year in 2025 over one game. I don't think it's just because of the FSU game. I think it goes all the way back to Texas win in 2023. That Alabama was showing cracks. They didn't have the players they had with Nick Saban. They really had to gain their resources and make the best out of it. And Nick Saban is one of the best coaches of development and scheming. But I think the main problem is Kalen Deboer. And it's a different breed with SEC play. It takes a different breed. And Nick Saban was all about physicality on both sides of the ball and discipline, not only on and off the field, but also finishing plays, making them run full strength. Like, let's go, full speed. If you mess up, we're doing it all over again, and we're going to keep doing it until you get it right kind of mentality. I don't think Kalen DeBoer has that. I think his coaching style is the schemes he runs. Is everything about Kalen DeBoer does not fit the Alabama and more broadly the SEC kind of style of play and discipline. It just don't work. It worked probably the way he did it worked for Washington. It'll probably work for anybody that worked in the Pac-12. Any team in the Pac-12, it can happen with his coaching style, his philosophy, the Big 12, and maybe the ACC. But it will not work in the Big 10 or the SEC because of physicality on both sides of the ball. It's a complete 180 of Nick Saban's discipline and yelling versus Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is probably not the right fit for the job, not very disciplined. You have players not really hustling, and I haven't seen Alabama get out-physicaled, especially in the first game of the year. I have not seen Alabama ever get out-physicaled as much as the Kalen DeBoer era as 1 year and one game in. They lost to 4 unranked opponents. He is 9-5. He already matched the unranked losses to Nick Saban over 17 years of being in Alabama. And it kind of started with Nick Saban and after the Texas win in 2023 when he said, "You better don't do that shit," when they did horns down. Now, I could tell that was going downhill. But really, it's Kalen DeBoer's mentality that made it worse. He is not the guy. It's not only the players, but the players that took an advantage of Kalen DeBoer, and his philosophy ain't working. It's a lot of things not going right for Kalen DeBoer. And it started going downhill noticeably as the first year of Kalen DeBoer, how his team operates. Nick Saban had Jalen Milroe and those guys, and it was kind of hard for getting some wins. Some wins were more difficult than others for Alabama to really dominate. There was some wins they dominate like the old Alabama, but they had trouble with Jalen Milroe. In 2024, they had Jalen Milroe too. Kalen DeBoer did. And they lost to Vanderbilt. Now, Florida had some trouble with Vanderbilt. Georgia lost to Vanderbilt a couple times. Everybody has trouble with Vanderbilt except for a few teams like LSU and certainly not Alabama. And when Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, got out-schemed, got out-physicaled, that was not Alabama football. And I was scratching my head. I said, maybe Kalen DeBoer is not the right guy for this job. And with the Florida State loss, that assures me he is not right for the job. That doesn't mean they're going to have a terrible season. That doesn't mean that. They could be 9-3, 8-4, and still miss the playoffs, but he is not the right fit for this team, and it reflects because you have all off season to build that mentality, especially in your second off season. Maybe to give you the benefit of the doubt of the first off season didn't fit in the scheme, but you have all off season to get ready for Florida State, get your philosophy, get the players you want, start doing that, and come out and lay an egg versus Florida State and get dominated on both sides of the ball. And Florida State is not more physical of Alabama or any SEC school, except for when Florida State, but that's a rivalry game. I'm talking about, as a Gator fan, Florida State's hard. It's rivalry week. Yes, we get it. But I'm talking about a regular SEC game. versus ACC without rivalry week. Florida State should have been blown off the ball by Alabama. They do not have the guys bigger than Alabama, better defense than Alabama. They don't. But to be blown off on both sides of the ball, basically clueless. Kalen Deboer basically scheme was blown up. And Ty Simpson ain't the best quarterback. Ty Simpson actually barely completed over half his, completions. And he has almost 300 yards, actually 254 yards in that game versus Florida State. He did the best he could with the scheme, and the defense surely didn't help him. Their defense got blown up. I don't think I ever seen a Nick Saban team, except for a very few handful of times. I barely probably count on one hand how many times his defense was bad on a certain game. But Kalen DeBoer, his consistency on offense and defense is really bad. And it's not on Ty Simpson's fault. We're going to have to give him a couple of games before we really judge that. But they were not very good with Jalen Milroe either. He was not a very good thrower. He was good at running the ball, but he had a cannon, but his accuracy was nothing. But I kind of knew it's going to be a hostile environment in Tallahassee. You're on the road. There's new players in plays. And you never stay the same. From year to year, you're never the same. You either get better or they get worse. And I think Alabama's going to be worse than last year. You cannot teach physicality during the point of the season. You can get better, but in the beginning, you better really get after them about being physical. Because you should have done that in the off season, in summer and fall camp. Now it's in the season. Now you barely have time for that. You got a game plan and walkthroughs. Get ready for the next game. You can't really change a lot during the course of the season. Now, Florida, with Bill Napier, he had to listen to his defensive players like, hey, that's too complicated. You had to simple it down. And give DJ Lagway some freedom. And guess what they did? They changed a lot. But it's not big major changes as physicality and stuff. It was adjustments of the plays that benefited Billy Napier from getting fired. Kalen DeBoer, his problem is the scheme, the philosophy, pampering players. Ryan Williams with the teddy bear. Nick Saban would not let that happen. But he lost total control already. And Nick Saban demanded control. Kalen DeBoer is complete 180. You just can't teach physicality during the season. Is embedded in the offseason, not during the season, and is also the player's choice how bad they want to play for you. And they will take advantage. You just can't teach physicality in the in-season. You just can't. And basically, the first game, really get the inks and ganks out, the cobwebs out, but there's so much you can do in the first couple of games and be like, oh, that's who you are. Your first 2-3 games is who you're, or the first big game. And the first big game was versus Florida State, and they did not look good. But if you don't have very good opponents in the first couple games until your conference game that's really big, then you found out who you are. We kind of figured out what kind of team Alabama will be, in a way, versus Florida State. And we will see it again versus Georgia, and later down the line with their rivals, Tennessee and LSU, how they will perform. But I think we got a good clue and actually idea how Alabama physicality is going to happen. They're going to be rocked. Maybe Florida State's a good team. Maybe they're not. But I don't think Alabama had that physicality, just like last year. If they had the physicality, they should have ran Vanderbilt down to the ground last year. They're a 6-6 team. They wound up being, Alabama was 9-3, 8-4 last year, and they should have ran them to the ground, and they didn't. This game versus FSU reflects who Alabama is under the coaching staff of Kalen DeBoer. And let's be honest, the title of the video is soft. Alabama is soft. Just basic, plain and simple. Alabama has gone soft.